Welcome to Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities presentation, Safe and Sound, Preventing, Addressing, and Reporting Significant Incidents, Provider and Vocational Rehabilitation Staff Training, 2026 Update. This is presented by the Provider and Contract Management Unit. My name is Jay Burns, and I'm here today with Sarah Trout. This training covers many core safety principles for working with Ohioans with disabilities, and it's really important to keep our participants safe. It's safe to OOD, it's safe to our providers, it's safe to our participants, families, and stakeholders. Many items in this training may be familiar to you in the past, so they'll be reinforcing principles of safety and responding to safety incidents. There's also some new materials added for this 2026 update. On this next slide, we're going to discuss the purpose of this training, safety first. There's a graphic image with a diverse group of people. We know that providers support individuals with disabilities in a variety of community settings. And providers ensure the safety of individuals served in the community, such as community work experience, summer youth work sites, and while providing job coaching. Sometimes incidents might occur. We believe that they're very rare, but when they do happen, they should be addressed with a sense of urgency, communicated timely, and clearly documented. The Significant Incident Report Form, or SIRF, is a helpful tool to ensure consistency, to make sure we have all the information captured and we've addressed all elements of the safety issue. In this training, we're going to review participant safety during services. Though some information can be found in the incident reporting and tracking procedure, this is not a training on that specific procedure. This next slide is discussing keeping participants safe. There is a graphic of a diverse group of people. When we think about safety, I think we often think about physical safety, which is so important. So when we talk about safety, it does include being safe from physical injury or harm, but we also want our participants to be safe from verbal, physical, or sexual harassment. We also want them to be safe from discrimination or harassment based on race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, national origin, age, and disability. It's important that we keep them safe from being exposed to inappropriate media or materials. And providers do have a responsibility to create an environment where violations are immediately recognized, addressed, and reported so they don't reoccur. We've been talking about duty of care expectations that OOD has long held for our providers. If you were able to join our summer youth work experience training, this term may be familiar to you. Duty of care is a term for legal responsibility of maintaining the health and well-being of others in areas where they rely on you. When someone joins services with OD and works with a provider, or puts someone that is maybe their parent guardian of or a family member, they have a tremendous amount of trust in OD and the providers that work with them to do their best to take care of those individuals. So we do expect that providers have a duty of care during the services they're providing, which includes transportation. If the provider is transporting them, then that starts when they pick them up or when the service time of the service begins on through the point of that participant maybe being dropped off at the home or point of origin, or being connected with the return transportation. So for example, they might be waiting for a bus or a parent pickup. And so we see this in summer youth work experience. The services and standards guides addresses it the following way. Provider staff shall be physically present and or actively performing a service for time to be billable. That's on page 37. And it also notes provider staff must remain on site and supervise the participants for the entire duration of the service. Provider staff must be available to the participants, not in a different building, working on reports in the break room, on a cell phone, etc. And that's from page 69. It's also important to note that duty of care is non-transferable to another provider, a participant's personal care attendant, a host site employee, another adult. It creates a conflict of duty of care as well as concerns about confidential protected information. So for example, if a provider is working with someone, they cannot transfer that duty of care to someone else in the vicinity while they leave that location during the service. We have to think about the legal liability element, that providers do have a legal responsibility to their participants. and providers have liability coverage for their participants from an insurance standpoint. And then we can also think about the parental or family expectations. This goes back to the idea that parents or guardians are putting a real high amount of trust in OOD and the providers, and that they're thinking that their child or their participant in the program is in the care of the provider all times. So we wouldn't want that individual not to be under the care of the person the parent or guardian expects them to be under the care of. Next, we have a phrase called make the winning choice. We have a graphic of a fire extinguisher putting out a flame as well. And we say, when in doubt, consider what's important now. And we're using the abbreviation of WIN, WIN, to stand for what's important now. When there's a safety issue, we absolutely want the provider to focus on immediately removing the danger or removing the participant from that danger. So going back to the visual, extinguishing the fire, so to speak. We have had incidents in the past where incidents were documented, but no measures were taken to actually prevent a future reoccurrence. So this is something that we really want to stress is when you make the winning choice, you're not just addressing the immediate concern, but you're making plans to make sure that as much as it's in our control, that doesn't happen again and the fire doesn't come back, so to speak. What is a SIRF? A SIRF is a significant incident report form. It's a form on which the significant incident is reported to OOD. It's always been a long-standing practice that when there is a safety incident, we need certain information to know what happened and to make sure that we've addressed that situation appropriately. Some years ago, there wasn't an actual form to report that on. The information was emailed into OOD, and by putting it in a form, it's really helped us organize things so that we get all the information up front that we need, and it's cut back a lot of back and forth and trying to get the additional information we need. So the SIRF has been a very useful tool for providers to be able to get the information all together and document that and for OOD to review that and make sure our response is complete and consider if any additional action needs to be taken. And the SIRF is for any significant incident, which is when an unusual incident potentially impacts an individual's health or safety. According to OAC Rule 3304-2-53, Qualifications and Standards for Service Providers and Vendors, sometimes called the Provider Rule, providers shall report and document all events which affect or pose a threat to the health and safety of individuals receiving services from OOD through the Significant Incident Report Form. Providers shall reference the Services and Standards Guide regarding timeliness, contact, and reporting process. The significant incident report form is to be completed by the provider staff working with the participant, e.g. job coach, job developer, as well as OOD staff when a significant incident is reported to or occurs during contact with OOD staff. Providers may have additional internal reporting requirements as well as their own agency policies and procedures regarding safety. Why is a SIRF needed? It's used to document the significant incidents that occur during OOD services. It's used to determine if it's safe for the participant to continue with services, and it's used to determine if a corrective action is needed to reduce risk. So it's helping us make sure the fire, metaphorically speaking, is extinguished and it's safe for us to continue. It's also used for us to consult with OOD's legal department and have all the facts together in one document in one place. And it's used to document other agencies involved in the incident or other individuals who may have been notified. When is the reporting period? A SIRF shall be submitted within 24 hours or an incident or issue. This is really important that we get this information within this time frame so we can make sure we're having a timely response. And when we say within 24 hours, that clock or timer for reporting starts when the incident occurs, not from when it's reported to provider management. When we've had untimely reporting in the past, it's been because it's taken some time to get from the provider staff that's directly providing the service to be communicated up through different layers of management, and then for the management to get that information to OOD. So if you're a provider, it'd be really important that your direct staff understand this reporting time frame, and anything that might be a safety issue is addressed immediately so we can meet this time frame of reporting and response. So they really need to be trained on recognizing, addressing, and reporting. When appropriate reporting has not occurred, there is a communication breakdown that we discussed, that there's a delay internally on the provider staff, and a failure by direct service staff to report incidents in a timely manner can result in unaddressed incidents, a recurrence of the incident, or a string of incidents rather than a single incident. So if we don't metaphorically put out that fire and address the safety issue in a timely manner, there's a risk there that that could actually reoccur. Next, I'll turn it over to Sarah Trout.
Thank you, Jay, for that great explanation of what a SIRF is. I'm going to talk a little bit about examples of when a SIRF is needed. This comes from the Services and Standards Guide on pages 9 through 10. First, if there's suspicion of illegal activity, like for example, violation of local, state, or federal law, and that includes state ethic laws, either committed or in the process of being committed by or against a participant. If an individual causes or attempts to cause harm, creates a risk of causing harm, or threatens the safety, health, and/or well-being of an OOD participant. And this next one you'll see again, we have highlighted or attempting to. If a participant is causing or attempting to cause harm, creating risk of harm, or threatening the health, safety, or well-being of a person. We are highlighting this year as we have had incidents where maybe the person did not cause harm, but there definitely was an attempt to cause harm. So that is a situation when a SIRF would be needed. Other examples include medical emergencies or mental health crises involving a participant. If a participant has reported abuse in their household, place of residence, or place of employment, or a provider staff have observed abusive behavior occurring either inside or outside of the participant's place of residence or employment. Another example, a participant exhibits signs of abuse or neglect. If a participant is the target of harassment, whether that be physical, sexual, financial, verbal, or harasses another individual, including allegations of harassment. A participant makes unwanted sexual advances or is the recipient of unwanted sexual advances, and a participant is missing from services, for example, walking off of a work site, leaving the provider office for any length of time and cannot be located. Some examples that we've had in recent years that we just wanted to share of when a SIRF would be needed is if a participant is in an automobile accident with a driving instructor or job coach, even if that accident is minor, please report that on a SIRF form. If a student is leaving summer youth work experience due to an illness and that student is seeking medical attention from that incident, please fill out a SIRF. Students left unattended at a work site due to a job coach being late or present or leaving the site for any period of time. So again, just as we would ask if a student walks off the site, we also ask that a SIRF be completed if a student is left on a site by themselves, unattended by provider staff. Students being left in the care of another provider's staff with an employer's staff or another individual's personal care attendant. Again, an example where the student is not in direct contact with that provider staff. Student bringing a weapon or threatening to bring a weapon to the work site. Just a reminder, again, incidents are considered significant when a participant is causing or attempting to cause harm, as in this case, creating a risk of causing harm or threatening the health, safety, or well-being of another person or themselves. In this example, all three of those areas are happening. Provider staff posting student participant photos to their individual social media pages as well. These issues all require a SIRF to be completed, and to assist OOD and providers in knowing what circumstances constitute a SIRF. Again, this information has been added to the instruction page of the SIRF form, and it's in the Services and Standards Guide on pages 9 through 11. Examples of when a SIRF is not needed. You would not need to fill out a SIRF if an individual case update occurs, such as a health diagnosis or a personal matter unrelated to current services being delivered, if a participant refuses to complete work tasks, if a participant is not performing work at the level of competitive integrated employment, or if a participant experiences an injury that can be or is treated by basic first aid. So again, if it's uncertain if a SIRF is required, please, you can always look at the services and standards guide, which on this page, we also have a screenshot of the front page of that services and standards guide. Please consult also with VR staff if it's still unclear. It's often better to have documentation of an incident and not need it than to not fully document it and later need the details, not have them documented, not be able to recall exactly what happened. So when in doubt, as Jay was talking about earlier, go ahead and fill out that SIRF form. All right, and when you do, we want to make a distinction between reporting observation versus diagnosing. The provider staff should not make mental or physical health diagnoses during service delivery or on service reports. So for example, of an inappropriate reporting, um, after the fall, Emily's leg was fine and was not broken. Job coach determined that Stephen has depression. These are both things that lean towards diagnosing. And as we're not medical professionals, we want to kind of stay away from making those diagnoses and assumptions. Examples of appropriate reporting would include after the fall, Emily stated she felt fine and had no pain. There were no visible cuts or bruises on her leg. Or Stephen stated that he has been feeling down lately and is not finding joy in activities he used to. Job coach noticed he was less talkative than usual and did not smile once during the day. Those are examples of appropriate reporting, and the more information you can give, the better. All right, parental guardian notification. If the incident involves a minor or participant with a legal guardian, the parent or legal guardian shall be contacted immediately after the health and safety of the participant is ensured. The SIRF should document any related parent or legal guardian communication. So, for example, the job coach phoned and spoke with Mason's mother regarding his fall, who appreciated the call. Please add those parental comments. Um, and this year we have included an exception, and the slide reads, if the SIRF involves allegations of parental neglect abuse and notifying the parent or legal guardian would not be in the individual's best interests, an exception can be granted by obtaining local supervisory approval. So if you feel that your case falls under this exception, please talk with your local supervisor to see if this would be appropriate. And then VR staff, please reference custody, guardianship, and power of attorney policy. And that is number 80-VR-19 if needed. And on this slide, we have an image of a woman in a wheelchair working on her computer. All right, so let's have a quick knowledge check. Which of the following incidents would be considered a significant incident which would require provider staff to address and report the behavior? Think of one or more selections. A, the participant punches a hole in a wall during services and makes a threat to harm others. B, participant states that he would prefer not to work and wishes he would win the lottery. C, participant slips and falls on a wet floor at a work site. He says his leg hurts. Or D, participant Y continuously sends inappropriate text to participant Z while in a group service. Participant Z has repeatedly told participant Y they do not want to be contacted, and it was reported to the job coach. The answer would be A, C, and D. So while significant incidences do not occur often, the situations noted in A, C, and D would all require a SIRF. Okay, we've got a few more examples for you. Would the following incidents require a SIRF form or other type of formal reporting? Scenario A, Charles is a 53-year-old male participating in OOD services. He has been participating in job coaching services that have been fading in duration. While at work over the weekend, Charles had a heart attack. This was not during the time that job coaching was provided. Is a SIRF necessary once the provider staff is informed of this incident? The correct answer is no. This occurred outside of OOD services being provided. However, once the provider staff is informed of this incident, it would be appropriate for this to be reported to the VRC or VR staff member. If the heart attack had occurred while job coaching was being provided, this would have occurred during OOD services and then would have required a SIRF to be completed. The second scenario is Haley is a 15-year-old female participating in a summer youth work experience. She discloses to the job coach that she has been physically abused by her mom. The answer is yes. Anytime there's a report made of possible abuse to a child or developmentally delayed individual or someone connected with their local county board of developmental disabilities, this should be reported immediately to the appropriate authority, for example, Children's Services, Department of Developmental Disabilities. OOD would need to be contacted and a SIRF completed whether or not the incident occurred during OOD services. The safety and security of a participant needs to always come first. Now, please note, the parent or guardian notification requirement exception may apply in this example. But also keep in mind, there could be times that it may not apply. So for example, if the parent that the individual is living with, if their parents are divorced or separated, it may be the case that the report is made of one parent, but not the parent that the individual is living with. So that's why we ask that the exception be staffed with your local supervisor, so that they can ask all the right questions and together determine whether or not this exception should be applied. All right, let's look at one more example. And in this example, we'll have one scenario and go through two potential outcomes. In this scenario, we are talking about a youth engaging in services who becomes frustrated, punches a wall, makes some verbal references to harming other people in the vicinity. So there are two ways that a provider may approach this. The first way, which would be the improper way, is for the provider staff to say, kids will be kids. The provider staff dismisses this behavior as part of their youth or as part of a disability-related symptom, and the participant continues in the group summer youth service. So what are the risks to this approach? There could be potential consequences, including, the participant believing that this behavior is acceptable in the workplace. Other students in the group could become afraid. The next day or week, the behavior could continue. It could return or escalate, and people would be at risk. The employers, other students on the site, and the work site could lose confidence in having VR participants on the site at all if this is not appropriately addressed. And worst case scenario, the provider could also be placed on a corrective action plan for failure to address behavior or report in a timely manner. So let's look now at the proper response. The proper response would be to stop and staff. So the provider staff should immediately report to the referring counselor coordinator. They should fill out a SIRF, and when that is done, there should be a staffing with the participant and their family before services can resume to discuss what does this person need, what would be safe for everyone. So I hope that you see here that there is a difference between, a provider saying, kids will be kids, dismissing the issue versus let's stop and let's staff. Let's fill out the SIRF so everyone has the appropriate information, and then let's staff that with everyone who needs to be a part of this conversation to see how we can better serve and keep this individual safe. Um, with these examples wrapping up, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Jay.
Thank you, Sarah. It was helpful to see those examples and talk through them. Next, we're going to discuss where to find the instructions for the SIRF. One way you could find them is in the Services and Standards Guide, which is on the VR Services and Standards page, and there is an image of a screenshot showing that. And then another area you can find that is on our OOD webpage under the Provide Information for Providers tab. There is a significant incident reporting page, which has information about reporting significant incidents, including the actual significant incident report form, or SIRF, which has the instructions built into that document. We're going to next discuss the provider instructions for the SIRF. As we've mentioned, we want the providers to take the immediate steps to ensure the individual's health and safety and that the risk is eliminated and address any safety issues immediately. If the incident involves a minor or a participant with a legal guardian, the parent or legal guardian shall be contacted immediately after the health and safety of the participant is ensured. We also want to notify the assigned VR counselor or contractor via telephone. Leaving a voice message is not sufficient notification of the incident or issue if it occurred during OOD business hours. If the VR counselor or contractor cannot be reached during OOD business hours, we do ask that the provider shall contact the VRC supervisor or call the local OOD office and speak with the supervisor or their OOD BRS provider liaison. And this step should be completed no later than 24 hours after the reportable incident occurred. Provider staff may have a responsibility to notify other agencies, such as the local county board of DD, local county public children or adult services agency, e.g. children's services, or law enforcement. We do have specific instructions for providers reporting incidents that occur outside of OOD standard office or business hours. So if the incident occurred during non-OD business hours, such as after 5 p.m., weekends, or holidays, and it did not involve filing a local county board of developmental disabilities major unusual incident or MUI report, calling 911, notifying law enforcement, or notifying child or adult protective services, providers are required to leave a voicemail with the VR counselor or contractor and follow up with a telephone call as soon as an OD office is open for business. However, we do have different reporting requirements if it's a more significant issue that occurs outside of OD business hours. And if it does involve filing an MUI, calling 911, notifying law enforcement, notifying child or adult protective services, we do have a requirement to immediately contact one of the following OD staff until answered: an OD associate area manager, or AAM, an area manager, assistant deputy director, or deputy director immediately after the individual's safety, health, and/or welfare was verified and other required contacts are made. OD contacts can be found on the Significant Incident Reporting webpage and are listed on the next slide. So on the web page we looked at, there is a list of staff. We do have them showing and displaying on this page for your convenience, but we do always recommend checking the Significant Incident Reporting web page for the most up-to-date contact information. And you can use this and go through the phone list. And so if you can't reach the first person, move on to someone else in the area. And then this is for those real significant issues that occur outside of OD hours. Let's talk about the SIRF submission. So after following the previous reporting steps, the provider staff shall follow up with a written copy of the SIRF within 24 hours. The provider shall submit only through secure email, i.e. Zixmail, to the VR counselor contractor and copy pcmu@ood.ohio.gov. Please email this document in a Word format Do not convert it to PDF. Wet signatures are no longer required. Rather, names can be typed. Do not type your name in a cursive or signature font. This is a recent change we made for ease of use, so providers no longer have to fuss with printing things out, signing them, scanning them back in. We tried to make it a lot easier with this latest update to the SIRF document, and we do ask that they remain in Word format. That helps it when it gets to OOD, as OOD staff need to fill out their elements of the report. And please note, if the provider spoke to someone on the telephone other than or in addition to the assigned VR counselor, VR contractor, such as a supervisor, associate area manager, deputy director, this person should also be copied on the email. Failure to follow this process may result in the provider being suspended and or placed on a corrective action plan. So OOD certainly takes safety very seriously, and we appreciate your cooperation in completing the SIRFs when it's required. Let's do a quick knowledge check on the items we discussed about after hours reporting and when that is required and when it's not required. So in our first example, Martin is a 25-year-old male participating in OD services. He's been receiving job coaching services. While at work at 7 p.m., he slipped on a wet floor and hit his head on some shelving. The job coach called 911 and the paramedics came and attended to Martin on site. He was not taken to the hospital. In this scenario, would provider staff need to contact an associate manager or other member of VR administration to report the incident? Or can they leave a voicemail with VR staff and call them back the next morning or the next time the OD office opens on Monday? In this example, an associate area manager or other member of VR administration will need to be contacted because 911 was called outside of OD business hours. Of course, a SIRF would need to be completed. Let's look at one more example. Sally is a 19-year-old female participating in a summer youth work experience. At 5:30 p.m., she got upset at a store employee, called her parents to come pick her up, and walked off the job site to sit in an adjacent parking lot. The job coach followed Sally to the parking lot and tried to de-escalate the situation. The job coach spoke with Sally's parents and her supervisor. The parents indicated they were on their way to pick up Sally immediately, as they live only a few blocks away from the job site. The job coach sat with Sally until her parents arrived. It was decided that Sally would end her shift early and go home with her parents. In this scenario, the provider may leave a voicemail with the VR counselor or contractor regarding the situation and make contact with the VR counselor or contractor when next time an OD office opens the next business day. So there would not need to be after hours reporting to an associate area manager or VR administration immediately in that incident. So 911 was not called in that incident. There was not a major unusual incident report filed. Of course, a SIRF would need to be completed. Next, we're going to talk about the requirements for OOD staff, vocational rehabilitation counselors, or our vocational rehabilitation contractor instructions. And we are going to reference procedure 10-ADM-04, incident reporting and tracking. Upon notification of the incident or issue, the VR counselor or contractor shall verify that the provider completed the appropriate steps. So this is after the provider has informed OOD staff or the contractor of the incident. This is their requirements when they have the information and when they have the SIRF in hand. They're going to check and make sure that the provider ensure the individual's safety, health, and or welfare. For example, did they call 911? Was first aid provided? They're also going to ask and consider, did the provider notify you or your supervisor via telephone? Remember, a voicemail is not sufficient. If the incident or issue happened during non-OOD working hours, did the provider follow the appropriate reporting steps if they were required for after hours reporting? If appropriate, did the provider notify other agencies, such as the local county board of developmental disabilities, children's services, or law enforcement, and fill out a corresponding major unusual incident report form if that was required? Was the SIRF submitted via secure mail, such as Zix mail, within 24 hours of the incident or issue? So again, we're just checking and verifying that this was reported with the SIRF timely within that 24-hour window. And if the provider spoke to someone other than you, was this person also copied on the email? If they were not, please forward it to them immediately. We'll also ask that you check and make sure that PCMU was copied on the SIRF submission email. If you notice they were not, please forward it to pcmu@ood.ohio.gov. We're going to continue with VRC instructions. The VR counselor or contractor, after reviewing the SIRF, shall also notify their supervisor and appropriate OD VRS provider liaison if the incident involved the provider within 2 hours of being informed of the incident. The supervisor is then going to report the incident via the chain of command, e.g. to the VR associate area manager, senior staff level manager, and the area manager or senior level manager will determine whether the incident requires discussion with the chief legal counsel, the Division of Human Resources, deputy director if incident is EEO related, assistant deputy director, and or the deputy director. So that's what we can expect to happen internally based on the specific situation. Each situation will be routed forward and decisions will be made at those levels. Please review the SIRF for completeness, including determining if there was any provider responsibility. If necessary, contact the provider and or other VR staff contractors to discuss the incident issue or obtain additional information. So sometimes when reviewing the SIRF, there will be a requirement to follow up with additional details. If the provider did not submit the SIRF in Word format, please send it back to them and request they resubmit it in the correct format. As the SIRF moves forward internally, we do need to keep that in a Word format so people can add their comments as that sort of moves through our internal process. Complete the OOD staff use only portion of the SIRF, e.g. follow-up requirements, action plans, and after the VRC types their notes into the SIRF, please upload into an aware case note with the title Significant Incident Report Form, then forward to your vocational rehabilitation supervisor. Continue with VRC instructions. If the provider failed to follow incident reporting requirements, including timeliness, please notify PCMU via email at pcmu@ood.ohio.gov. PCMU staff shall contact the provider to ensure they come into compliance with the incident reporting requirements. Currently, after the VRC completes their OOD staff use only notes, they forward the SIRF to their supervisor. At this time, they do not need to forward to PCMU, as this would happen once the SIRF reaches an AAM or AM and there's relevant information for PCMU. Upon receipt of a SIRF, PCMU staff will review it and, if determined necessary, contact the VR counselor contractor, the provider, and or other appropriate individuals or entities to collect additional information, discuss report details, and or to provide support and or management. PCMU will follow up with the provider to discuss noncompliance. If appropriate, PCMU may place the provider on a corrective action plan, CAP, and or suspend services. Next, I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah Trout.
Thank you, Jay. I'm now going to continue with considerations following a significant incident. After the incident occurs, consider, does the service need to be paused in order to complete it safely, or consider next steps? So consider the following: changing to an individual service if the incident took place during a group service, meeting with the individual support team. So, for example, the family, a counselor, appropriate school contacts, local county board of DD, if they have a services and support administrator, to discuss success strategies. And in reviewing success strategies, is there something on the IEP or the Ohio ISP that may give further information that would be helpful? Consider switching to a new work site or trying new work tasks. Developing a behavior plan or agreement with the provider's staff, individuals, parents, and legal guardians, if applicable, with clear boundaries. Do we need to modify the schedule? Let's discuss if this is the right time for this service or if the service should be terminated. Review the Ohio ISP document if possible. recommending staffing complex cases with vocational rehabilitation supervisor. Provider health and safety. Providers should have procedures for ensuring participant safety. And providers shall be able to provide OOD a copy of their policies and procedures that address participant health and safety within 24 hours of being requested to do so. This is included in our provider rule. Also, services may not be able to continue until significant incidents have been resolved between the participant, OOD, and the provider with a safe plan to move forward in place. Providers are responsible to accurately report any significant issues or safety concerns to participants and/or their parent or legal guardian as appropriate. And then effective March 28, 2022, the updated provider rule that I mentioned requires provider background checks and identifies requirements for transporting participants. Please note that this applies to seasonal staff as well. And this is something that we have requested in the past as part of a CAP, that the provider show proof that all of their staff working directly with participants have a valid background check on file. So you want to make sure that that is all up to date. And then we have some resources for you. The referral to CRP form will have the referring VR staff's phone number. So if you need to not sure who to contact, you can check that referral form or also in the Aware Vendor portal. If you need to find the main office phone number for any of our OOD offices or appointment centers, you can quickly find that at https://ood.ohio.gov. And we do have a screenshot of our webpage with the instructions that you can click on the Information for Individuals tab in the top left-hand corner, and it's highlighted in yellow in the picture. And then click on Find an OOD Office or Appointment Center, and that is highlighted in the lower midsection of the screenshot provided. If you need assistance with finding out how to fill out an MUI for the Board of Developmental Disabilities, that can be found. You can go to https://dodd.ohio.gov/. Again, we have a screenshot provided, and you'll want to click on the You and Your Family tab on the top left. Again, that's highlighted here in this picture. Click on the Contact Your County Board, which that's circled in yellow in the bottom right-hand side of the picture. And there you can find you can report an MUI or a most unusual incident by phone or download the incident report from the relevant county board. And then we also have information on how to reach Children's Services. There's a phone number and automatic telephone directory that links callers to child welfare or law enforcement office in their county. And that number is 855 and then the word OH child, or 855-642-4453. And when you call, there is some information that you can have handy that would be helpful in making the report. The first one is the name and address of the child you suspect is being abused or neglected, the age of the child, the name and address of the parents or caretakers, the name of the person you suspect is being abused or who is abusing or neglecting the child, and the address if available, the reason you suspect the child is being abused and neglected, and any other information that may be helpful to the investigation. You will have the option of giving your name or reporting anonymously. Giving your name may help the investigator clarify information, but the agency will not give your name to the person suspected of abusing the child. So again, any information that you have to provide would be helpful. And then we just want to say thank you. Thank you to our providers, our VR staff, VR supervisors for all you do to keep participants safe during the summer and year round. And we also just want to give a shout out to our Department of Legal Services as they review pieces of this presentation and they assist us with consultations on SIRFs that happen all year round. So thank you so much.